What's up, y'all? This is Eddie T, Slumpfish. Today we're going to be playing around with the Behringer Proton. Now, I'm not really a big fan of Behringer, the company. I'm not too good for them. I have a TD3, a Model D, but I find that the build quality of their synths is not as reliable as some of their competitors, like, say, Chord or Novation. However, they have an original design that they created, a very special synth that's near and dear to my heart, and that is the Behringer Neutron. I love the Neutron. I got it as a gift. I busted it out one day, put it on my desk, and it basically stayed on my desk for a whole year. So when I heard that there's a sequel to the Neutron, and it is the Proton, and it has an extra filter, an extra LFO, as well as more modulation options and wavefolding, I was like, okay, all right, let's do it. I'm gonna go through it feature by feature. I'm gonna tell you my thoughts along the way, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, what could have been done better, how it compares to the Neutron, and I made a bunch of music so you can hear how it actually sounds in action. All right, let's go. So one of my favorite parts of the Neutron was that you can move between the different waveforms and blend them between each other, like move between the square wave and the saw wave, and it would create these really interesting tonal variations. And then you could, of course, send modulation to the shape so it would move between them. That was kind of one of the most powerful, or at least for me, the most attractive and most useful parts of the Neutron. The Proton can do that as well, but it by default comes with that turned off. So when you first get it, you're just going to be moving between saw wave, square wave, pulse wave. I don't like that personally, so I'm going to show you guys how to fix that. You hold down range for each oscillator like this. Now you hit para. That turns it off for oscillator 1. We'll do the same thing for oscillator 2. Boom. So now we can move between each of these wave shapes smoothly. I'm going to show you what that sounds like. The oscillators are the same as the Neutron. This is not where they changed things up, but they made it so you have some sub-oscillators. If you dial the submix all the way to the right, then all you're getting is your normal waveform like you would have gotten in the Neutron. And if you dial it to the left, it will bring in the sub-oscillator. So I'll show you that. Okay, so you can hear that. It brings in like a smooth lower part, a little warmer. All right, that right there, that's such a beautiful balance. I found that when it came to droning out and doing like wavefolding, I'm getting these really high, prickly, textural, upper register tones. And oftentimes in a drone, you know, like that's awesome, but it's a little harsh. Bring in the sub oscillator, and now we've just filled it out with a really nice, warm bottom end to just kind of fill it in. And that made my droning like immediately to the next level. One of the features of the Proton that is also present in the Neutron is the Paraphonic Mode. You can kind of hear this weird thing happening where when I let go of the keys, it kind of triggers another note. Da-da. Earlier I was messing with this. I drove myself crazy. And the best solution I could come up with is just turn the release all the way down and put some delay on it. So I'm gonna do that right now. Usually I do the variable waveform, but because we need each of these oscillators to be locked in with each other for their waveforms, we're going to turn that off. And we want to do something funky and cool like a saw wave. Let's do a little low pass. I want that to change over time. I want it to add the sizzle, but not for the whole time. I want it to dip back into that beautiful, murky, buttery sound. So we're gonna use envelope depth to do that. Filter 1 is always connected to envelope 1 unless you tell it otherwise. We're gonna do an attack, a little long. It's also set on slow attack here. And we'll do a little bit of, let's dial in this sustain. To be honest, y'all, I did not think to have your mono synth be used in this way, but that sounds really good. Honestly, I think locking it to the waveform is what makes the difference. Earlier, I was messing with it with variable waveforms and it did not sound like this. Another thing they added to the Proton is an extra filter. I thought it was going to be like a serial filter situation where you can put a high pass on one and then feed that into the next one and shave off some of that top end with the low pass. It doesn't really work like that. They're parallel and you mix between them. Essentially, if you go all the way to the left, then the signal is running 100% through filter 1. Let's say we have a low pass on this, you know. Okay. That's filter 2. So now we can blend these together. There's a lot of options there. I really enjoyed combining a high pass with a low pass because if you blend it in the right way, you're kind of cutting out the middle. And of course, we can add movement with our modulation depth. The filter 1 and filter 2 are both connected to LFO1 and LFO2, as well as envelope 1 and envelope 2. I ran into this really stupid problem and I have to share it with you. The filters come with the modulation depth knob and it comes with the envelope depth knob. But if you try to patch in a modulation source into where it says you can affect it with modulation on this board, it actually won't let you do that. And I was like, am I going crazy? Is this actually affecting it or not? You have to hold down the mode button and then it's going to light up down here on the LFO. You use the LFO encoder. It's going to come with this top light picked. For some reason, it's assigned to none as your modulation source. So you have to move it down one to MIDI. Even though I wasn't trying to use MIDI, just saving you a headache because, you know, like me, I want to be able to like grab a LFO from another synth, put that in here, and it just would not let me, which is nuts. So next up, we have the envelopes. Envelope 1, as I said before, is directly linked to filter 1, filter 2, envelope 2. Envelope 2 is also, by default, your amp envelope. One thing that's really cool is, say you don't want to link filter 2 to the amp envelope. You want it to move at a different rate. Obviously, you can just stick with the first filter and that's going to be its own envelope doing its own thing. But if you want to mix in the other filter, you can connect it to the first envelope by holding down this. And the red light will link the second filter to the first filter. If you hit it again, you get the white light. That's going to link it to the first filter, but inverted. Super useful for sound design, specifically when you're applying a high pass. Because when I have a high pass, I like to jump backwards with it and let in the low frequencies and then move up over time, cutting them out. I have to say, another example of when they were listening to what people wanted out of the Neutron is the LFOs. There is a one-shot mode in the Neutron, but you had to do a button combo to get it, and I'd always have to look it up. It was annoying, so I didn't mess with it. Now it's just a simple button. We also have sync, which is really cool because now we can set the rate of the LFO to track the clock of the MIDI. And of course, we also can retrig. We can do all three of these at once. Very useful. They also, in general, just made this easier to use. Whenever it's red, that means these buttons are only applying to LFO1. When it's white, that means it's LFO2. There was only one LFO on the Neutron, and you had to patch it into your attenuator to then apply it to something else, which, you only got 2 attenuators, so it kind of like wasted one attenuator. So they went ahead and they added attenuators to the LFOs themselves. So we don't have to use our attenuators. We can patch directly in. We could do LFO1 into, oscillator 1. One problem I had is LFO2, when I plug in to say oscillator 1, I have this built-in depth knob, but if I want it to be doing just a little bit, just the tiniest bit of movement, what I noticed is as soon as I plug this in, it immediately starts affecting the pitch, even though the depth knob is at 0. This is with it unplugged. This is with it plugged in. It should be nothing, right? If I then go to attenuator 1 and go out of attenuator 1 into oscillator 1, now I can actually get a 0 amount of modulation. Now it's doing what it's supposed to do. Something that I often will do is put a really light amount of modulation up and down, and I wasn't able to do that without using up one of my attenuators. That kind of sucks. Moving on. Obviously, we have our 2 ADSR envelopes over here, but we have these 2 extra envelopes down here. These are pretty sick, and I'm pretty sure they added them just so that we could use it on the Wavefolder. The way it works is if you hit Shift, it's just like the LFOs. Red means you're on ASR 1. White means you're on ASR 2. We can put it on loop, which will basically turn it into an LFO. It will follow the shape of the attack and release, and then after it comes back down, it will just do it again. It's kind of like a unipolar LFO. You could also do an inverse, reverse it, or we could just add our sustain. Retrig, basically if you hit a note, it's going to trigger this. But if you're holding down a note and then you hit another note, this will not get triggered again, unless you have this button on. I went ahead and set up a patch using the ASR envelopes to demonstrate how we would modulate things like the Wavefolder, or in this case, the LFO rate. First of all, this is how it sounds. Pretty sick. It's a sawtooth wave, and the oscillators are tuned a little bit apart so that they make a nice little chord. ASR 1 is going into attenuator 1, attenuator 1 is going into the Wavefolder, ASR 2 is going into attenuator 2, which is then affecting the LFO2 rate. The LFO is affecting the voltage controlled filter cutoff. I'm going to turn the attenuators all the way down so you can hear what it sounds like when it's not doing anything. So you can hear there's not as much movement there. Let's turn up attenuator 1 and see what that does to the sound. So the main thing it does is it increases the intensity and the perceived loudness. It also is affecting the tonal qualities of it. Attenuator 2 is affecting the rate of the LFO2. So let's see how that sounds. So that was an exaggerated amount. The LFO rate is following the path of the attack and release of ASR 2. What's happening is the rate is jumping up to a very rapid, faster speed, and then it's dropping down to a slower speed. Of course, we don't want it to be that intense. We want it to be a little more subtle than that. Something really special about that wavefolding. The most exciting part, the part that was like making me really want this synth, is the wavefolding. I pretty much left that thing on for almost all the patches I made, whether it was a kick or a snare or a lead or a bass. It's kind of perfect for dialing in the right amount of crunch and complex overtones that are taking something that is like relatively calm or normal and just giving it a little, like a crown of thorns on the top of it. Or you can be a lot more subtle, just kind of like putting a little bit of gel in your hair, giving it some spikes. So you have 4 options. This one is just amplitude. This one is halfway affecting the signal. This one is all the way affecting the signal. Most of the patches I made were all just set on 1. And I was surprised by how much it didn't really register to me that the waves were being folded. But let me give you a sense of what that sounds like. Ooh. Oh yeah. Messing with the symmetry knob now. Yes, yes, yes. What are the differences between the Neutron and the Proton? They took out the delay module that was built into the Neutron. I think it was cool that they had that in the Neutron, but the quality, the tonal quality of that delay, it was an analog delay, was kind of a little scratchy, a little warm. I find that when it comes to making modular sounds, like I like a little bit of a crisper and clean delay. It just kind of makes a nice contrast for when you have like a very earthy, warbly tone. So the delay that was built into the Neutron, it wasn't always the best fit. That said, it was so accessible and so easy to use that I did end up using it a lot because, it's right there. But I would often even use that going into another delay. I don't miss it. I don't really care. One of the other things that they took out is the overdrive. I don't think the Neutron needed the overdrive. I think the sound of the pure oscillators themselves is so nice that it wasn't doing it any favors to just add this overdrive to it. And one of the problems was, even if the setting was at 0, it was still affecting your signal because it was baked into the signal path. I just wanted to play with the individual pure oscillators themselves, so I always would patch around it. The fact that they took the overdrive out, probably a good thing. One of the things I miss the most is the sample and hold in the patch bay. You were able to clock into the sample and hold rate. I found that while I was making patches with the Proton, I really wanted something like that, especially since the Proton has a CV mix control. So if I could put in sample and hold into that CV mix and then be mixing between that and an envelope or just a LFO on a sine wave, I really wish they had left that back in. The 2 attenuators that they added are bidirectional. One thing that I wish we could do with these attenuators is I wish we could patch into the CV for controlling these knobs. On the Neutron, you could do that for one of the attenuators. You could control that amount. They took that out. I also wish that this filter mix up here, I wish we could have had CV for that as well. And then of course, if we could do it for the CV mix as well, man, you could have an LFO affecting this and that simultaneously, maybe inverted. But alas, we'll just have to use our fingers like cavemen. I also don't like the fact that the knobs are kind of flimsy. They don't feel strong in my hand. They don't feel firm. And some of them are stiffer than others. Like some of them have a smooth glide and some of them you have to put a little more effort into it. And I'm the type of person, I get really into what I'm doing. I'm gripping that knob so hard. With the Proton, I'm afraid I'm gonna break it. Nice. And we still have our mix knob to move between them. Just really cool that they did that. And then we could, of course, affect these differently. Like we could have LFO1 affecting shape, and LFO2 affecting the pulse width of oscillator 2. So we can do something cool like, say, let's take LFO2, let's put it into our mult channel. We're gonna come out mult 1, we're going to go into what it was before, which is the pulse width of oscillator 2. And we're going to take mult 2 and we're going to go into the pulse width of oscillator 1. And already the fan. Let's go ahead and add some wavefolding. Yes. Turn it up. All right, let's mess with the filter. Put a little modulation depth on it. Just for fun, let's hit the sync button and see what happens. Cool. Oh my God. Yes, this is why I love this. Having spent all this time with the Behringer Proton, it really just feels like a Neutron with a wavefolder added, which that is what it is. It's the same oscillators, the same filters. Because of that, I kind of have mixed feelings about this synth. On the one hand, I love playing it. I already made a bunch of things that I really like, and I'm going to be using it more in the future. But if you already have a Neutron, I'm not sure you need a Proton. Obviously, 2 synths is always better than 1. But if you have a limited budget, limited desk space, just pick one. I would go with the Proton because of the more modulation capability and the wavefolding, but the Neutron is still a workhorse. It's still a badass synth. There you have it, Behringer Proton. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. If you're interested, all these sound examples and patches that I created for this video are going to be available as diagrams that you can download from my Patreon. They're going to be available at the lowest level just because I'm literally just hand drawing in where the knobs go. So it's not as exact as I would like to be, but I think what I made is a really cool starting place for making some cool sounds and showing you what you can do with it. Thank you for watching. I love you. Goodbye.